I don't want this baby, and frankly, I don't want you, Nalia.
On a warm June afternoon in New York City, Nalia could feel her heart pounding in her chest as she sat under the glaring studio lights. The cheers and chatter of the live audience at the New York City daytime talk show buzzed in her ears. She rested a protective hand on her belly, reminding herself to stay calm for the sake of the little life growing inside her. This was supposed to be a happy moment, she thought, fighting the flutter of nerves in her stomach. Today was the day she would announce her pregnancy to the world, and to her husband Griffin, in front of everyone. Welcome back to the channel, and if you're new here, I'm so glad you found us. Today's story is one of those that will stay with you long after it's over. I want you to know this one is intense. We're talking about public humiliation, unexpected betrayal, and a plot twist involving a billionaire that you absolutely won't see coming. If you enjoy powerful stories like this, hit that like button now and subscribe to the channel so you never miss an upload. Drop a comment at any point while watching and let me know your thoughts. All right, let's get into it. Griffin had been invited on the show under the premise of celebrating inspiring family stories. Nalia had arranged it as a surprise. She imagined the producers telling him that their segment would highlight their love story, how they met and fell in love, only for her to reveal the exciting news that they were expecting their first child. In Nalia's mind, this moment was going to be a beautiful memory, the look of joy on Griffin's face as she revealed the pregnancy, the audience applauding their happiness, perhaps even a few tears of joy. It was the kind of heartwarming reveal that daytime TV audiences loved. However, sitting there now, Nalia's palms were sweaty and her mouth felt dry. Something in Griffin's demeanor was unsettling her. He sat beside her on the studio couch, running a hand through his sandy blonde hair, his jaw tight. Maybe he's just nervous being on TV, she tried to assure herself. He had been quieter than usual all morning, but he hadn't suspected anything about the pregnancy or the surprise. Nalia had kept it secret for weeks, waiting for the right moment. Her heart squeezed at the thought that perhaps she should have told him privately first. But Griffin always loved grand gestures and public displays. At least, he used to. Lately, he had been distant. Nalia hoped this surprise would rekindle the closeness they once had. The host, a charismatic woman with a gleaming smile, began the segment. Today we have a special couple with us, the host announced to the audience. They've been married for 3 years, and they're here under the pretense of sharing their inspiring love story. But one of them has a secret to reveal. She winked theatrically, and the audience ooh-ed with anticipation. Nalia mustered a nervous smile. She glanced at Griffin. He offered a thin, perfunctory smile to the crowd, but when his eyes flicked to Nalia, there was an unreadable expression in them that made her stomach twist. "Griffin and Nalia, welcome," the host continued, turning towards them. "Nalia, I hear you have something you want to share with your husband today, live on our show. This is exciting." Nalia swallowed hard, trying to steady her voice. "Yes," she said, forcing brightness into her tone. I do." She reached for Griffin's hand, but he subtly pulled it back into his lap. That slight rejection stung, but she pressed on, attributing it to his nerves. "He's just startled by being here," she told herself. She took a deep breath and looked into Griffin's blue eyes. They weren't warm with love or curiosity. Instead, they looked oddly cold. "Still," she continued, voice trembling slightly, "Griffin, these last few years with you have been wonderful and full of love," she began. "We've built a life together, and well, I wanted to share this special news with you here, in a memorable way." Griffin's brows furrowed. "Nalia, what are you doing?" he muttered under his breath, almost inaudible to the audience, but she heard the irritation in his tone. The host leaned in, eager for the revelation. The audience hushed in anticipation. Cameras zoomed closer to capture their faces. Nalia's heart was drumming wildly, but she pressed on, her voice now clear enough for the microphone. "Griffin, I'm pregnant. We're having a baby. I'm 3 months along. You're going to be a father," she announced, her voice gentle yet filled with emotion. Saying those words out loud felt exhilarating and terrifying all at once. The crowd erupted in gasps and cheers at the revelation. The host clapped her hands together with delight. "Oh my goodness! Congratulations!" she exclaimed. "Griffin, how do you feel? You're hearing this for the first time. You're going to be a dad." All eyes turned to Griffin. Nalia's lips trembled in a hopeful smile as she waited for his reaction. For a split second, his face went blank with shock. In that heartbeat, Nalia thought she saw fear in his eyes. Then, to her confusion, his expression hardened into something bitter and angry. He abruptly stood up from the couch, jerking away from Nalia. "A dad?" Griffin's voice was sharp and incredulous. There was no hint of joy, only accusation. "You're pregnant?" he echoed. The happy murmurs of the audience quickly died down, a tense hush falling over the studio. Nalia felt cold dread spreading through her. This was not the reaction she expected. Her hand instinctively went to her belly. "Griffin, I know it's a surprise, but I thought you'd be happy," she said softly, her cheeks flushing as hundreds of eyes bore into them. The host looked frozen in place, unsure how to handle the sudden shift in mood. Griffin let out a harsh, humorless laugh that echoed over the silent audience. "Happy? How on earth could I be happy about this?" he spat out. He paced a few steps, running his hands through his hair in agitation. "We never even talked about having kids now. And you decide to spring this on me on live television?" Whispers rippled through the audience. Nalia's eyes burned with tears she was desperately trying to hold back. I wanted it to be a surprise, a good surprise," she managed to say, her voice cracking. She reached out towards him, pleadingly. "Griffin, please." He whirled on her, stepping just out of her reach. "This is exactly why you brought me here," he snapped, gesturing at the cameras and the audience. "To trap me into playing along with your little announcement." The host interjected gently. "Griffin, perhaps you're just shocked. Many people are overwhelmed when they learn they'll be a parent. Maybe you—" But Griffin cut her off sharply. "No, I'm not overwhelmed in the way you think. I'm angry." He pointed at Nalia, his finger trembling with rage. "You lied to me. You manipulated me into coming on TV so you could ambush me with this." Nalia felt the first tear spill over. "I didn't lie," she said, voice trembling. "I wanted to tell you so many times in private, but you've been so distant lately. I thought this would—" "You thought trapping me on live TV would make me suddenly okay with this?" Griffin's laugh was cold. Unbelievable. He turned to the host and the cameras, his next words making Nalia's blood run cold. "Well, congratulations, Nalia. If it's even mine." A collective gasp came from the audience. The host's eyes widened in shock. Nalia felt as if the ground had opened beneath her. "Griffin!" she cried, unable to believe what he just implied. Her voice cracked painfully around his name. Griffin shook his head, face twisted in a sneer. "This is what you wanted, isn't it? To paint me as the bad guy on national TV. Fine, I'll be the bad guy." He looked directly into the camera now, speaking as if Nalia were no longer a person to him. "I want everyone to know that I have no part in this. I didn't agree to any of this." He then glared at Nalia, contempt seething in his eyes. "I don't want this baby, and frankly, I don't want you, Nalia." There was an audible shockwave in the studio, audible not in sound, but in the collective held breath of hundreds of spectators. The host raised a hand to her earpiece, likely getting frantic instructions from producers. Nalia sat frozen, tears streaming down her face now. It felt as if each of Griffin's words had physically struck her. "He doesn't want me. He doesn't want our child." The painful reality of it crashed over her. Her worst nightmare was happening in front of the world. She opened her mouth to plead or to reason, but no words came, only a choked sob. The audience began to murmur uneasily. Some booed at Griffin's cruelty, others just watched with morbid fascination. The cameras kept rolling, capturing every second of this train wreck. The host quickly tried to salvage the situation. She placed a comforting hand on Nalia's shoulder. "Nalia, I'm so sorry." But Griffin wasn't done. He stepped forward, speaking directly to Nalia now, each word like ice. "You want a nice soundbite for your show? Here it is. I reject this. I reject this pregnancy." He practically hissed the words. "I refuse to be a father. And as for being a husband," he removed the slim gold wedding band from his finger with a dramatic flourish and dropped it onto the studio floor. The metal ring pinged as it hit the hard stage, the tiny sound somehow deafening in the silence. "I'm done." Gasps and even cries of outrage rose from the audience. Nalia's hand covered her mouth in shock as a wail built in her throat. She couldn't believe this was happening. Her vision blurred with tears and bright stage lights. The host signaled the cameras to cut to commercial, and suddenly stage managers rushed forward. Chaos erupted on set, half the crowd shouting at Griffin, others trying to comfort Nalia, producers gesturing wildly. Griffin, breathing hard as if he'd just fought a battle, looked down at Nalia one last time. For a brief moment, something like conflict passed over his face. Regret, guilt, she couldn't tell. But then he hardened again. He turned on his heel and strode off stage, leaving Nalia sobbing on the couch. Under the glaring spotlights, her whole world shattering on live television. Backstage at the studio was a blur of tears and chaos. As soon as the cameras stopped rolling for commercial break, production assistants had rushed to shield Nalia from the prying eyes of the stunned audience. A kindly stage manager wrapped a shawl around her trembling shoulders and guided her off the set. Nalia clutched it tightly around herself, as if it could shield her from the reality of what had just happened. Her face was wet with tears, and her makeup was smeared. But that was the last thing on her mind. "Let's get you somewhere private," the stage manager murmured, ushering her down a hallway. Nalia could barely see where she was going. The world swam through her tears. She heard murmurs of sympathy from a few crew members they passed. Embarrassment and heartbreak warred within her, making her cheeks burn hot, even as the rest of her felt cold and numb. How could this have gone so terribly wrong? They led her to a quiet dressing room. The instant the door closed behind her, Nalia broke down completely. A raw, keening sob tore from her throat, echoing in the small room. She sank to the carpeted floor, wrapping her arms around herself. Her entire body shook with the force of her crying. "He left me. He really left me." The disbelief mingled with anguish. She pressed a hand over her mouth, trying to stifle the sounds of her heartbreak, but there was no containing it. The pain was overwhelming. After several minutes, a gentle knock came at the door. "Nalia?" "It's me." The familiar voice of her best friend, Simone, filtered through. She had been watching from the studio audience and rushed backstage the moment the cameras cut. Nalia tried to compose herself enough to speak. She managed to choke out, "Es Simone?" Simone didn't wait for further permission. She slipped into the dressing room and immediately knelt by Nalia's side on the floor. Simone's face was etched with concern, her dark eyes shiny with her own tears of empathy. Without a word, she pulled Nalia into a tight embrace. Nalia collapsed against her friend, fresh sobs racking her. Simone stroked her back and murmured softly, "I'm so sorry, sweetie. I'm so sorry." I don't understand." Nalia gasped between cries. "Why would he do this? What did I do wrong?" Simone pulled back to cup Nalia's face in her hands. "Look at me," she said firmly, though her own voice trembled. "You did nothing wrong. Do you hear me, Nalia? This is on him. Griffin's the one who chose to act like a complete jerk." Simone bit back the stronger word she wanted to use, aware they were likely still on studio premises. Nalia wiped at her eyes, though the tears kept coming. "I was just trying to share good news. I thought he'd be happy. He was the one who—" Her voice broke. "He was the one who married you, who made vows to you," Simone finished softly, anger flashing in her eyes on her friend's behalf. "And he was the one who decided to break those vows in the most public, humiliating way." Simone's arms tightened around Nalia. "You didn't deserve this. Not at all." Nalia closed her eyes, leaning into her friend's support. For a few moments they stayed like that on the floor, Nalia drawing what strength she could from Simone's presence. Eventually, Nalia's sobs quieted into soft sniffles. She realized she was utterly exhausted, emotionally and physically drained. A soft knock came again, and the door cracked open. The show's host peeked in, her expression apologetic and gentle. "Nalia?" "Hi, I'm sorry to intrude. I just wanted to check on you," she said carefully. Nalia hastily wiped her cheeks and tried to straighten, embarrassed to be seen in such a state. I'm okay," she managed to say, though her red eyes and quavering voice told another story. The host stepped in and closed the door for privacy. She approached slowly, as if Nalia were a wounded animal that might startle. "I am so sorry about what happened out there," she said, genuine remorse in her voice. "This wasn't what we expected at all for the segment. If I had known—" She trailed off, shaking her head. "I didn't know either," Nalia whispered. Fresh pain lanced through her at the memory of Griffin's words. She unconsciously touched her ring finger. Her wedding band was still there, but now it felt like it was burning her skin after Griffin had discarded his. The host nodded sympathetically. "Of course. Listen, we cut to commercial and then moved on with the show, but we did not air anything further about you. I think it's best we escort you out quietly to avoid any media that might be outside." She hesitated. "Do you have someone here to take you home?" Simone stood up next to Nalia and squared her shoulders. "I'm here. I'll make sure she gets home safe." The host offered a small smile of relief. "Good. There are some reporters gathering at the main exit. This story is, unfortunately, going to draw attention, but we can take you out a side entrance." She paused, then added, "Nalia, if you need anything, help finding resources, or even just someone to talk to, we can connect you with a counselor. The station wants to help." Nalia managed a weak nod. "Thank you," she murmured. Part of her was angry at the show's producers. They had set up this dramatic reveal after all, but a larger part of her knew no one could have predicted Griffin's reaction. If anything, they likely expected a feel-good moment like she had. It wasn't the show's fault that her husband turned out to be who he turned out to be. With Simone's arm around her protectively, Nalia followed the host and a security guard through a maze of back hallways. Her legs felt like lead, and she was grateful for Simone's steady support. They emerged into an alley where a black car was waiting. Apparently the show had arranged a private car to get her home safely. The chilly afternoon air of Manhattan hit Nalia's damp face, making her realize she was still crying softly. She shivered, and Simone quickly helped her into the car. The host gave her hand a final squeeze. "Take care, dear. We'll be in touch to make sure you're all right." During the ride, Nalia stared blankly out of the window as the city blurred past. The driver had been informed of the situation and respectfully kept the partition up and the radio off. The silence left Nalia with nothing to distract her from her thoughts. Snippets of what happened replayed in her mind on an agonizing loop. Griffin's hateful words, the way he threw his ring, the shocked faces in the crowd, the click of cameras capturing her humiliation. Suddenly, a thought jolted her. The cameras. That meant this was recorded. People would see this beyond just the live audience. A sinking feeling overcame her as she realized the episode would air on television and likely be posted online as a viral clip. The whole world could potentially witness her deepest hurt. How am I going to face anyone after this? As if reading her mind, Simone gently placed her hand over Nalia's. "Don't think about them," Simone said softly. "It doesn't matter what some strangers on the internet say. What matters is you and your baby now." Nalia looked at her friend through teary eyes. "Everything's falling apart, Simone," she whispered. "Griffin's gone. I'm pregnant and alone, and the whole world is laughing." Her voice cracked on the last word. Simone shook her head fiercely. "The whole world is not laughing. Anyone with a heart is on your side, Nalia. If anything, they're angry at Griffin, and you are not alone. You have me. You have your family." At the mention of family, Nalia winced. "Oh God, my parents probably saw that broadcast," she groaned, covering her face with her hands. Her parents lived in California but streamed the show online to watch her. They had been so excited thinking it was just a feel-good feature on her and Griffin. The thought of them witnessing that disaster made her stomach lurch with nausea. Simone rubbed Nalia's back comfortingly. "They'll be worried, sure, but they love you. They'll support you however they can. You'll get through this. Nalia lowered her hands and leaned back against the car seat, closing her eyes. She wasn't sure she could get through this. The heartbreak was like a physical weight on her chest, and fear coiled in her gut when she thought of the future. How would she raise a child alone? Her mind flitted to practical concerns. She and Griffin shared an apartment. Well, they had. What now? Would he even come home? Would he expect her to leave? They had been splitting rent, but she'd temporarily taken a leave from her museum job as her pregnancy progressed, and at Griffin's urging to rest more. She had some savings, but not enough for New York's high cost of living on her own long term, especially with a baby on the way. When the car pulled up to her apartment building, Nalia felt a surge of anxiety. What if Griffin was inside? She wasn't ready to face him again so soon. What if he had locked her out? Simone seemed to sense her hesitation. "Do you want me to come up with you?" she asked. Nalia nodded gratefully. "Please." They made their way through the lobby and up the elevator to the 10th floor. Nalia's hands shook as she unlocked the door to the apartment she and Griffin had shared. Pushing it open, she braced herself for confrontation, but the apartment was silent and still. Inside, nothing had visibly changed in the short time since this morning. The throw blanket was still on the couch, where they'd cuddled watching a movie a few nights ago. The kitchen sink still had the cereal bowl Griffin had left in a hurry before they went to the studio. The normalcy of these little details felt jarring compared to the upheaval that had just taken place. Nalia released a breath she didn't realize she was holding. Griffin wasn't here. Maybe he wasn't coming back at all. A fresh stab of pain hit her at that thought, but also a sliver of relief that she didn't have to face him right now. Simone helped Nalia out of her coat and guided her to sit on the couch. "Let me get you some water, okay?" Simone offered gently. Nalia nodded and watched blankly as Simone moved about the kitchen, fetching a glass and filling it. Her gaze drifted to the coffee table where a happy photo from their wedding day sat in a frame. She and Griffin were beaming, looking deeply in love, captured in a sunlit moment that felt like a lifetime ago. Hot tears pricked her eyes again. How had it all gone so wrong? Simone returned and pressed the cool glass of water into Nalia's hands. "Drink a little," she urged. "You need to stay hydrated." Nalia complied, sipping the water even though her throat felt like sandpaper. The simple act of drinking grounded her a bit. She had to take care of herself physically, if not for her own sake then for the baby's. The thought made her instinctively rest a hand on her belly again. The baby. Right now, that tiny life was the only thing that gave her a sense of purpose. She had to be strong for her child. After a few minutes of silence, Simone sat down next to her. "I can stay over tonight," Simone said softly. "If you don't want to be alone." Nalia gave her a grateful look. "Thank you. I think I'd like that." She wasn't sure she could handle the crushing loneliness of this apartment tonight. Everywhere she looked held a memory of Griffin. From the collage of vacation photos on the wall to the pair of his shoes still by the door, it all threatened to break her again. As twilight fell, Simone busied herself tidying up a bit and making some tea, trying to create a calming atmosphere. Nalia made the difficult calls she had to. First, speaking to her sobbing mother and stoic father on video chat, assuring them that she was physically okay, though none of them could keep their tears in check about what happened. Her parents insisted they would fly out to be with her, but Nalia managed to convince them to wait a few days. She wanted a moment to collect herself and figure out a plan, and she had Simone for support right now. Next, Nalia called her employer, a prestigious art museum where she worked as a curator. Her supervisor expressed shock and sympathy, having seen clips of the incident circulating online. The museum board had decided to grant Nalia extended paid leave to recover from the ordeal, which was a relief. At least her job was secure for now, even if she couldn't face going back anytime soon. Still, it was hard for Nalia to shake the worry that this highly public drama might tarnish her professional reputation in the long run. The art world could be a gossip mill, and she dreaded being whispered about as that curator whose husband humiliated her on TV. Throughout the evening, Nalia avoided looking at her phone besides those necessary calls. She didn't want to see the inevitable social media explosion. But while heating up soup, Simone glanced at her own phone and grimaced. "They've uploaded the clip," she said softly. "It's already going viral." Nalia closed her eyes, a pained expression crossing her face. "I don't want to know what they're saying," she murmured. The thought of internet strangers dissecting her pain, or worse, making cruel jokes at her expense, was too much to bear right now. "You don't need to," Simone agreed, quickly putting her phone away. "It doesn't change anything. People will talk, but they'll move on to something else soon enough." She draped a blanket around Nalia's shoulders. "Right now, let's just focus on you. 1 hour at a time, okay?" Nalia nodded faintly. 1 hour at a time, she echoed. It was a small comfort, but it grounded her. She didn't have to solve everything tonight. Just get through tonight, then tomorrow, and so on. Late that night, after picking at a few spoonfuls of soup and toast Simone made, it was hard to eat, but she forced herself for the baby's sake. Nalia lay in bed, unable to sleep. Simone was in the living room on the couch, insisting she'd stay up in case Nalia needed anything. The apartment was dark and quiet, but Nalia's mind was loud with anxiety and heartbreak. She kept replaying Griffin's words, torturing herself with what-ifs and whys. Why did he change? Why wasn't he happy about our child? Was it something I did? Her thoughts spiraled. Maybe she should have noticed more signs earlier. Maybe she shouldn't have blindsided him on TV. As much as she wanted to blame him entirely, a part of her questioned her own choices. But no matter how many times she went in circles, she couldn't have predicted this level of cruelty. Tears silently slid down the sides of her face onto the pillow. The baby kicked softly within her, almost as if sensing her turmoil. Nalia placed a hand on her belly, trying to steady her breathing. "It's okay, little one," she whispered into the darkness, voice trembling. "We're going to be okay. I'll make sure of it. I'm here for you." Saying it out loud was as much to reassure herself as it was a promise to her unborn child. Eventually, sheer exhaustion caught up with her, and Nalia drifted into a fitful sleep. Her pillow was damp and her heart was heavy, but she held on to one thing, a tiny ray of determination sparked by her love for her baby. Griffin might have abandoned them, but she would not abandon her child or herself. Somehow, she would pick up the pieces. Little did Nalia know, as she struggled through her darkest night. Somewhere else in New York City, someone had witnessed her plight. A stranger, one of the countless viewers of that dramatic TV broadcast, couldn't get her tearful face out of his mind. In fact, that stranger was no ordinary viewer. He was a man with the power and influence to potentially change Nalia's life. And at that very moment, he was making plans of his own. Across the city, high above Manhattan in a sleek modern office tower, Donovan Hale found himself replaying a shocking video clip that had landed on his social media feed. It was the early evening after the talk show incident, and instead of reviewing the financial reports open, on his laptop, Donovan's attention was utterly captured by the scene unfolding on his phone screen. He leaned back in his leather chair, his sharp grey eyes fixed on the video. On screen, a beautiful dark-skinned woman on a talk show couch announced she was pregnant, only to have her husband explode in anger and denounce her and the baby. Donovan watched the man, Griffin, he gathered, tear off his ring and storm away, leaving the woman crumpled in tears. The clip ended there, but Donovan's mind filled in the rest, the agony on the woman's face, the gasps of the audience, the cruelty that had played out in front of millions. A muscle in Donovan's jaw tightened. He felt a surge of anger on the stranger's behalf. How could any man treat his wife that way, let alone publicly? He thought of the despair and humiliation in her eyes. It made something in his chest ache unexpectedly. He hardly knew this woman. Just her first name, Nalia, gleaned from the host's introduction at the beginning of the clip, and yet he felt an almost protective concern for her. Donovan set his phone down and rubbed a hand over his face. He realized he was genuinely upset by what he had seen. As the CEO of a major tech company, Donovan was used to dealing with facts, figures, and high-stakes decisions on a daily basis. He wasn't typically one to get emotional over television drama, yet there was something different about this. Perhaps it struck a chord from his own past. Donovan's father had walked out on him and his mother when he was just a boy. He knew too well the pain of abandonment, the lasting impact it had on a family. Watching Nalaya's heartbreak play out triggered old memories he usually kept buried, his mother's tears when the child support never came, the look of quiet anguish she thought he didn't see when she struggled to pay bills, the way she soldiered on alone. But it wasn't only his childhood echoes that stirred him. There was also something about Naliya herself in that clip, the courage it must have taken her to share such news publicly, the genuine joy in her eyes before it all went wrong. She had been positively glowing with hope, and then utterly shattered. The transformation was gut-wrenching. Donovan couldn't shake it from his mind. He picked up his phone again and saw the clip had millions of views already. The internet was ablaze with commentary. Headlines were popping up on news sites about the pregnant wife live TV rejection. Donovan rarely paid heed to viral gossip, but this felt personal now. I have to do something, he thought. It was an impulse he didn't fully understand, but he knew he couldn't just move on with his evening as if nothing happened. A soft knock on his office door interrupted his thoughts. His executive assistant, Lydia, poked her head in. "Mr. Hale? The car is waiting to take you home. Is everything all right?" she asked, noticing the distracted look on his face. Most of the staff had left for the day, and Donovan usually headed home by this hour unless urgent business kept him late. Donovan straightened up. "Yes, thank you, Lydia. I'll be down in a minute." She nodded and hesitated. "Also, about that video you asked me to find, I emailed you the link. It seems to be all over the news now." "Thank you," he replied quietly. He had asked Lydia to pull up the full context after stumbling across the short clip, and she had done so efficiently. Once she left, Donovan clicked the link in his email to watch the segment from the beginning. This time, he saw Nalaya's introduction by the host and the lead-up to the announcement. He noted the hopeful, nervous way Nalaya looked at her husband, the subtle signs of tension in the man even before the reveal. Watching the entire saga unfold, Donovan felt his chest tighten in empathy and anger all over again. By the end of it, as Griffin stormed off leaving Nalaya sobbing, Donovan's mind was set. He quickly shut his laptop, grabbed his coat and briefcase, and headed for the elevator. In the back of his mind, a plan, or at least a strong inclination, was forming. He wanted to reach out to this woman, Nalaya. Perhaps he could help her in some way. Donovan was a man of considerable resources. He could at least ensure she had support. Maybe his company's charitable foundation could offer assistance, or he could quietly make a donation to help with her upcoming child's expenses. But a donation felt too impersonal. He found that what he really wanted was to speak to her, to let her know. Not everyone in the world was as cruel as the man who'd hurt her. Riding down the elevator to the lobby, Donovan pulled out his phone again. With a few taps, he called one of his contacts, a public relations specialist who often liaised with media on his behalf. "Hey, Mark," Donovan said when the man picked up. "I have an unusual request. Are you familiar with that viral talk show clip today, the husband who walked out on his pregnant wife?" Mark chuckled wryly. "Familiar? It's all over my Twitter feed. Hard to miss. Pretty brutal stuff." Donovan stepped out of the elevator, striding across the marble lobby. "Yeah. Listen, the woman in that video, Naliya. I'd like to get in touch with her. Privately. Can you arrange that? Perhaps through the talk show's producers or network." There was a brief silence on the other end as Mark processed this. "I can certainly try. Shouldn't be too hard to get a message to her. May I ask what the nature of this contact will be? Just so I know how to present it." Donovan appreciated that Mark was discreet enough not to press too hard. "I'd like to offer her some help. Possibly a job opportunity or any support she might need. Off the record, it's a personal matter." "Understood," Mark replied professionally. "I'll reach out to my contacts at the network and see if they can pass along your information to her. Or, if she's open to it, perhaps arrange a meeting." "Thank you, Mark," Donovan said, relief evident in his tone. "The sooner the better." As Donovan slid into the back seat of his waiting town car, he gazed out at the sparkling city lights of New York in the early dusk. He felt an urgency he hadn't felt in a long time, an eagerness to make a difference in this one person's life. It was almost puzzling. He donated to countless causes and helped many people through his philanthropic endeavors, but this was different. This was personal and immediate. On the ride home, Donovan's thoughts wandered to how exactly he could help Nalaya. He knew from the news articles that had already surfaced that Nalaya worked in the art world. One article identified her as a curator at a Manhattan art museum. That rang a bell. Donovan recalled attending a charity art gala last year at that museum. He might have even met her in passing there, though he couldn't be sure. In any case, her professional background gave him an idea. He had been planning to commission an art consultant to help curate a collection for his company's new headquarters and also to select pieces for a community art center his foundation was funding. Perhaps he could hire Nalaya for that project. It would be legitimate work suited to her expertise, not charity, an opportunity for her to rebuild professionally while getting any financial worries off her mind. He also considered her more immediate needs. If her husband truly abandoned her, she might be facing emotional and financial challenges. Maybe his outreach could simply start as a gesture of kindness. He could offer to cover any medical costs for her prenatal care or set her up with contacts for support groups or counselors. Donovan realized he was practically planning her whole life for her, and he smiled wryly at himself. He would have to be careful. He didn't want to come on too strong or make her feel like a charity case. Pride could be delicate in situations like this, he knew. By the time Donovan arrived at his penthouse apartment overlooking Central Park, he had resolved that he would do whatever it took to help Nalaya, and maybe, in the process, get to know the woman who had unwittingly captured his attention and compassion. As he stepped into his spacious, impeccably furnished living room, he loosened his tie and finally allowed himself to relax a fraction. His reflection in the floor-to-ceiling windows showed a tall man with dark hair slightly mussed from running a hand through it, an unconscious habit when he was deep in thought. Right now, that reflection also showed determination set in his features. Donovan poured himself a glass of sparkling water and checked his phone. Mark had already texted, reached out to the network. They will forward your contact info to her manager friend. We'll keep you posted. He exhaled slowly. He wished he could do more than just wait for permission to contact her. A day ago he didn't even know Nalaya existed, and now he was impatient to hear back about meeting her. It was an odd feeling. Donovan was used to being decisive and acting swiftly, especially in business. But with a personal matter like this, he had to proceed carefully and respect her boundaries. For all he knew, Nalaya might not want any further attention after such a public ordeal. She might even refuse his help if she misunderstood his intentions. He found himself standing by the window, looking out at the city lights that mirrored the stars above. In the quiet of his home, Donovan allowed himself a moment of reflection. Why do I feel so strongly about helping her? He wondered. He thought again of his mother and of how different their lives might have been if someone with means had stepped in to help when they were struggling. His mother was a proud woman. She would have initially resisted, just as Nalaya might. But life had been so cruelly unfair to her. Donovan's success today was in part a drive born from seeing his mother suffer and wanting to give her a better life, which he eventually did once he found success. Perhaps, deep down, he saw a bit of his mother's strength and pain in Nalaya's eyes on that video. Perhaps he also saw a chance to do for a stranger what he wished someone had done for them long ago. And, if he was completely honest, there was also something more personal drawing him in. The way Nalaya carried herself even in heartbreak, there was a grace there, a resilience that shone through her vulnerability. Donovan felt an admiration and a subtle protectiveness he couldn't quite explain. He certainly found her beautiful, but it was more than that. It was the beauty of her spirit under adversity that moved him. He shook his head, almost amused at himself. It was too early to be feeling anything beyond empathy. He hadn't even met the woman yet. But he resolved that he would, soon. And he would make sure that when they met, he came with a genuine offer of help that she could accept without feeling indebted or uncomfortable. As Donovan prepared to unwind for the night, he drafted an email on his phone to his HR department's director to outline the possibility of bringing on an art consultant for the new projects, without naming anyone yet. He wanted all the pieces in place so that if Nalia said yes, things could move quickly. Before heading to bed, Donovan stepped out onto his balcony for some fresh air. The cool night breeze tousled his hair. Far below, the city hummed, alive and unaware of the quiet decision being made in one penthouse above. Donovan looked up at the sky, thinking of the strange ways life could intertwine paths. Yesterday, he had been consumed by budgets and board meetings. Today, fate had dropped a completely different concern into his life in the form of a tearful woman on a screen. He felt a surge of resolve. Tomorrow, hopefully, he would get a response. And maybe, just maybe, he could help turn this woman's tragic day into the beginning of something better. Sunlight streamed weakly through the gaps in Nalia's living room curtains as the next morning arrived. Nalia was curled up on the couch, wearing the same sweatshirt and leggings she had. Thrown on after the disastrous show the day before, she clutched a mug of ginger tea that Simone had made, though it had long gone cold. Despite snatching only a few hours of restless sleep, Nalia had been awake since dawn, her mind already anxious about the day ahead. Simone, ever the caring friend, had stayed the night and was now tidying up the kitchen area, determined to make breakfast. "You need to eat something," Simone gently insisted, as she placed a plate of toast and scrambled eggs on the coffee table. Nalia managed a faint smile of gratitude. "Thanks, Simone. I'm not really hungry, but I'll try." Her stomach was still knotted with residual stress, but she knew she had to keep her strength up for the baby. As Nalia gingerly nibbled a slice of toast, her phone buzzed on the couch next to her. She tensed, worried it might be another sensationalized news alert or, worse, a message from Griffin, though she doubted he would bother. When she saw an unknown number flashing on the screen, she hesitated. "Should I answer? It might be another reporter," she murmured. Since last night, a few reporters had somehow gotten her number and left voicemails seeking an interview or a comment on the incident. She had ignored them all. Simone came over and peeked at the caller ID. "That's a New York area code. Could be anyone. I'll answer if you want," she offered. Nalia nodded, grateful. Simone picked up the call and put it on speaker, ready to hang up if it was something unwanted. "Hello?" Simone answered cautiously. "Hello, I'm trying to reach Nalia." "Nalia Wells?" A polite male voice spoke. Nalia and Simone exchanged a surprised glance. The caller used her maiden name, Wells, which she'd started using again professionally. After yesterday, she couldn't bear to use Griffin's last name at the moment. Few people knew that update except her employer. "This is she," Nalia said, finding her voice, and motioned for Simone to put it off speaker. Simone handed the phone to her and hovered nearby, concerned. "Who's calling, please?" "MS Wells. My name is Jonathan Reese. I'm an assistant producer from the Morning America talk show. He worked for the same network as yesterday's show, though this was a different program. I'm calling because we were contacted by a representative of Mr. Donovan Hale, who expressed interest in speaking with you. We wanted to confirm if you would be open to that, and if so, to facilitate an introduction." It took Nalia a moment to process the name and the request. Donovan Hale. The name sounded vaguely familiar. Then her eyes widened. "The CEO of H-Tech Innovations?" she asked, recalling headlines about a tech magnate with that name. He was one of those young billionaire entrepreneurs often featured in business magazines. What on earth would he want with her? Jonathan cleared his throat. "Yes, that's correct. Mr. Hale saw what happened yesterday and reached out to us. He has some opportunities he'd like to discuss with you, but of course, only if you're comfortable. We can pass along his contact information or help arrange a meeting. In a secure, private way if you prefer, given the media attention." Nalia was floored. She cast a baffled look at Simone, who looked equally astonished. Why would a billionaire CEO be interested in her situation? An uneasy thought struck her. Was this going to be some kind of pity offer, like a charity case? The idea pricked at her pride slightly, but she reminded herself she did need all the help she could get right now. And if it truly was a legitimate opportunity, she thought of her baby and the uncertain future ahead. Cautiously she replied, I'm open to hearing what he has to say. But I'd prefer the meeting to be private, not publicized. The last thing she wanted was another public spectacle, or to feed the media frenzy. Absolutely, we understand, Jonathan said. Mr. Hale's team suggested a private lunch meeting at a restaurant of his choosing, or if you prefer, at an office setting. Whatever makes you most comfortable. I can send details to your email if that works. Nalia swallowed, heart fluttering with nerves at the surreal turn of events. Lunch sounds fine. A public place, but perhaps somewhere quiet. She looked at Simone, who gave an encouraging nod. That can be arranged. How about today at 1 p.m.? Mr. Hale has offered to meet at La Chevalier. It's a high-end French restaurant in Midtown that has private dining areas. He's reserved a quiet table there, but if you'd rather choose another location, he's flexible. La Chevalier, I've heard of that, Nalia thought. It was known to be discreet and upscale, a place where celebrities could dine without much hassle. It reassured her slightly that Donovan Hale was thinking of privacy. That would be fine. Excellent. I'll email you the reservation details and have a car arranged to pick you up if you need transportation. That's not necessary. I can get there, Nalia said, though in truth she wasn't sure if she was up for navigating the subway or a cab in her current state. Simone gently nudged her and whispered, "Let them," knowing Nalia's independent streak but also her vulnerability right now. Nalia relented, adding, "Actually, a car pickup would be appreciated. Thank you." Jonathan sounded pleased. "Great. We'll send a car to your residence at 12:30. And Ms. Wells? I think you'll find Mr. Hale genuinely wants to help. He requested we emphasize there are no strings attached. Well, I'll let him explain. Good luck." After hanging up, Nalia sat there in stunned silence for a moment. Simone broke it with a burst of excitement. "Girl, do you realize who Donovan Hale is?" "I know he's some rich tech CEO," Nalia said slowly. "I've seen his name in Forbes or something, but I don't understand why he'd care about my situation." Simone shrugged, handing back the phone. "Who cares why right now? This could be huge. Maybe he has a job for you or wants to help fund something for you. Billionaires don't just reach out every day." She paused, then teased lightly. "Also, if I recall from those magazine covers, he's pretty easy on the eyes." Nalia managed a tiny laugh, the first in what felt like forever. "Simone, that's not what this is about." I know. But still, a fancy lunch with a handsome billionaire who wants to help you. It sounds like something out of those romance novels." Simone wagged her eyebrows playfully, trying to lighten the mood. Nalia's cheeks warmed, and she shook her head, trying not to smile. "This is reality, not a novel. And I'm a pregnant, heartbroken mess, remember?" She gestured at her rumpled clothes and tired face. "Hardly heroine material right now." Simone softened, sitting next to her. "Hey, you're a beautiful, strong woman who's been through hell and back. If this Donovan Hale has any sense, he'll see that. But more importantly, maybe he can give you a bit of the break you need. There's no harm in hearing him out." Nalia nodded, absorbing her friend's words. "You're right. I'll hear him out." She glanced down at her hand on her belly. "For the baby's sake, I have to consider anything that could help us." Soon after, Simone helped Nalia get ready for the meeting. Digging through Nalia's closet, they selected a tasteful but comfortable outfit, a navy blue wrap dress that accommodated her growing bump, and low-heeled boots. Simone tamed Nalia's thick curls into a neat twist and applied light makeup to hide the evidence of her sleepless night. By noon, Nalia looked put together, perhaps not as radiant as she once felt, but at least presentable and professional. Inside, however, her nerves were fluttering. Meeting a powerful stranger under these circumstances was daunting. At 12:30 sharp, the intercom buzzed to announce the car's arrival. Simone gave Nalia a quick hug. "Text me the moment it's over, okay? And call if you need anything. I can be there in a flash." "I will," Nalia promised, taking a deep breath. "Thank you for everything, Simone. I don't know what I'd do without you." "You'll never have to find out," Simone smiled. "Good luck. You got this." With that boost of confidence from her friend, Nalaya squared her shoulders and headed down to the car. A courteous driver opened the door of the black sedan for her. On the ride, she found herself absently rubbing her belly for comfort. The baby responded with a soft kick. It made her smile. No matter what else was happening, she wasn't alone. She had her little one with her. The car pulled up to La Chevalier, where a doorman guided her inside. The restaurant was elegant and hushed, all white linens and polished wood, with a few lunchtime patrons scattered around. The maitre d' greeted her by name, as if he had been expecting her. "Right this way, Miss Wells. Mr. Hale is already here." Nalia's heart thudded. She smoothed her dress nervously and followed the maitre d' through the main dining room to a more secluded section partitioned off by decorative screens. There, at a corner table set for two, stood Donovan Hale. He looked up as she approached, and for a moment, their eyes met. Nalia silently observed him, tall and fit, dressed in a tailored charcoal grey suit that spoke of quiet luxury. He had neatly groomed dark brown hair, and even from a few feet away, she could see his eyes were a clear steel grey that seemed both intelligent and kind. The magazine photos hadn't lied. He was strikingly handsome, but what caught her off guard was the warmth in his small smile as she came nearer. This wasn't the aloof titan of industry she'd imagined. There was an approachability in his expression that put her slightly at ease. Donovan stepped forward and extended a hand. "Miss Wells, I'm Donovan Hale. Thank you for coming to meet me." His voice was gentle and courteous, lacking the arrogance one might expect from someone of his status. Nalaya accepted his handshake. His grip was firm but respectful. "It's nice to meet you, Mr. Hale," she replied quietly. "And please, call me Nalaya." He nodded. "Only if you'll call me Donovan." "Mr. Hale makes me feel 100 years old," he joked lightly. A tiny smile tugged at Nalia's lips. "All right, Donovan." He gestured to the table. "Shall we sit? I took the liberty of ordering some iced tea for us, but if you'd prefer something else, let me know. The chef here is fantastic, by the way, if you're hungry." Nalaya sat down across from him. "Iced tea is great, thanks." Truthfully, her appetite was still shaky, but the pleasant aroma of the restaurant and the normalcy of a lunch setting was comforting in an odd way. For a moment, an awkward silence loomed as she settled in. Donovan seemed to sense her nervousness. He gave an apologetic tilt of his head. "I realize this is a bit unusual. I'm sure you're wondering why I asked to see you." Nalia met his gaze. "The thought had crossed my mind once or twice," she admitted, trying to sound light, though her voice was soft. Donovan sighed, and she noticed that he had the faint shadow of tiredness under his eyes too, as if he hadn't slept much either. "First, let me say, I'm so sorry for what you went through yesterday. I know we're strangers, but as someone who saw it unfold, it was heartbreaking. You didn't deserve that." Emotions welled in Nalaya's chest. She had heard that phrase, "You didn't deserve that," from Simone, from her parents over the phone, and now from this kind stranger. It both hurt and healed her to hear it. "Thank you," she murmured. "It's been a lot to process." "I can only imagine," Donovan said gently. "I want you to know I didn't call you here to pry or to make you relive it. Actually, I'd like to focus on what comes next for you, if that's all right." Nalia nodded slowly, intrigued despite herself. "What comes next is a bit uncertain for me right now." It was an understatement. In truth, she felt like she was standing on the edge of a cliff with no idea where to step. Donovan folded his hands on the table, leaning in slightly in a conversational, concerned manner. "That's exactly why I wanted to talk to you. After seeing what happened, I did a bit of reading and learned about your background, purely so I could figure out the best way to help. I promise I wasn't trying to snoop." She raised her eyebrows in surprise. "My background?" He smiled briefly. "Well, some of it was in the news already. I read that you're an art curator. In fact, I think I might have attended an event at your museum last year, the Spring Gala at the Metropolitan Arts Museum. Were you involved in organizing that by chance?" Nalia's eyes widened. "Yes, I was one of the coordinators. I was there that night." She searched her memory and realized he had been a VIP guest. though they never met personally. She suddenly felt self-conscious, wondering what else he might have learned. "What else did you find out?" Donovan gave a reassuring shake of his head. "Nothing invasive, I assure you. Just that you're highly respected in your field, and that you took a leave recently, which makes sense given your pregnancy. I'm not here to dig into your personal life beyond what you're comfortable sharing, but knowing you have an art expertise is actually what gave me an idea for why I might be of help." At that, the waiter arrived with tall glasses of iced tea and took their lunch orders. Donovan ordered a light grilled salmon and salad, and after a moment's deliberation, Nalaya requested a small serving of butternut squash soup. Once the waiter departed, Donovan continued. "My company, H-Tech, is expanding to a new headquarters building early next year," he explained. "I'm in the process of acquiring art to furnish the offices and lobbies, and beyond. That, my foundation is opening a community art center in Brooklyn later this year. I've been looking to hire a consultant to curate and acquire pieces for both projects, someone who has a great eye and connections in the art world." He paused, making sure she was following. "When I learned about your situation, it struck me that perhaps this is a role you could fill." Nalaya blinked in surprise. A consulting job? She hadn't expected a concrete opportunity right off the bat. "You want me to curate art for your company and a foundation center?" Donovan smiled. "Yes, if it interests you. It could start as a contract position, short-term or long-term, up to you. It would come with a salary, of course, and benefits if you want to make it more permanent. We could even arrange flexible hours or remote work options so that you can manage it while expecting and after you have the baby." Nalaya was stunned by the offer. It sounded almost too good to be true. She was quiet for a moment, processing. I don't know what to say," she admitted. "I mean, it's an incredible offer. But why are you doing this for me?" She had to ask the question that loomed largest in her mind. "You don't even know me." Donovan nodded, as though he had anticipated the question. He took a breath and spoke earnestly. "I know. Normally I wouldn't interfere in a stranger's life like this. But something about your story moved me deeply. Maybe it's because I was raised by a single mother who went through struggles of her own, or maybe I just hate seeing a good person knocked down so unfairly. When I watched what happened, I felt compelled to do something to help, and since I happened to have this need for an art consultant, it seemed like a practical way to offer support without it being charity." He emphasized that last word, knowing it might be a sensitive point. Nalaya felt a lump in her throat. His sincerity was evident, and the thought that this powerful man had been moved by her plight enough to create an opportunity for her. It was overwhelming. "It's not that I don't appreciate it. I do, truly," she said softly. "I just worry that I'd be taking advantage, or that I might not be in the right headspace to take on work so soon." "Those are valid concerns," Donovan acknowledged gently. "How about this? There's no pressure or expectation. Even if you decide you're not ready to work right now, I'd still like to help you in any way I can. But if you are interested, we can. Tailor the work to what you feel up for. Maybe start with a small project, or just brainstorming sessions. You'd have autonomy and no strict deadlines. My team can work around your schedule." Their food arrived, giving Nalaya a moment to breathe as the bowls and plates were set down. The warm, fragrant soup smelled inviting, and she realized just how comforting a normal routine like lunch could be. She took a spoonful, the savory taste grounding her a bit. Donovan watched her with concern. "How is it?" he asked, nodding at the soup. "It's good," she said, finding a small smile. "I think I needed this." They ate a few bites in silence. Nalaya was gathering her thoughts. She had gone from hopelessness last night to now having a potential job on the table. One that used her skills and came with the understanding of her situation. It felt like a lifeline. But along with gratitude, she felt an unexpected flicker of self-doubt. Would she be able to focus on work while dealing with her emotional turmoil? And what about when the baby arrived? Being a new single mother and juggling a project could be challenging. As if sensing her swirling thoughts, Donovan spoke up again softly. "If I'm overstepping." or if any part of this makes you uncomfortable, please tell me. I promise, my intentions are simply to help, not to pressure you. Nalia set down her spoon and met his eyes. They were truly kind eyes, she noted, steady and sincere, with none of the pitying condescension she had feared. You're not overstepping, she said. In fact, I'm incredibly grateful. It's just a lot to take in. Yesterday I thought my life was ruined. I was ready to hide under a rock indefinitely. And now, you're here offering me a way to pick up the pieces. I almost feel like I don't deserve this kindness. Donovan's expression softened even more. You do deserve kindness, Nalia, more than what the world gave you yesterday. And you're not some charity case. You're a talented professional who would be doing me a favor by lending your expertise to my projects. So if it helps, think of it that way. This is me recruiting you because I need someone great for the job, he added with a light, encouraging tone. Plus, I have it on good authority that you have excellent taste. The museum gala you coordinated was one of the best events I attended last year. Nalia felt a shy warmth at the compliment. Thank you, she said, and she meant it on many levels. She took another bite of soup, gathering courage. I would like to accept, at least to try. Perhaps we can start on a trial basis, see how I manage. A genuine smile broke out on Donovan's face, lighting up his features. That sounds perfectly fine. We can do a trial period and adjust as needed, and I'll have you know, I'm a very flexible boss, he chuckled softly. Nalia found herself smiling too, a real one this time. It felt almost foreign on her face after so much sorrow, but it was natural in his presence. I appreciate that, she responded. They discussed a few more practical details as they finished their meals. Donovan would have his HR send her a contract to look over, with no rush on start date. They agreed she could take a couple of weeks before diving in, to give her some breathing room. He also mentioned that if she needed any resources, such as a comfortable workspace at home or transportation, the company would provide it. Through it all, Nalia was struck by Donovan's considerate nature. He was clearly very intelligent and business-savvy, but he communicated with empathy and respect. She found herself relaxing gradually, even laughing softly when he recounted a light-hearted anecdote about how he nearly hung a ridiculously expensive but ugly painting in his current office until a colleague intervened. Clearly, I need expert help, he joked. As lunch came to a close, Donovan's tone turned gently concerned again. I know I've thrown a lot at you in this meeting. Before we part, I want to make sure, are you truly okay? Do you have a support system around you? Forgive me if that's too personal. Nalia was touched by the question. I have my family, though they're across the country, and my close friend Simone, who's been by my side since yesterday. Emotionally, I'm coping, I guess. One day at a time. She hesitated, then added quietly, It still hurts. I won't pretend I'm not a mess internally, but I have to be strong for my baby. Donovan nodded in understanding. That's perfectly okay. You're allowed to hurt, and you're also doing the right thing focusing on your child. He reached into his suit jacket and pulled out a sleek business card holder. From it, he handed her a card. This has my personal line. If you need anything at all, whether it's related to the consulting work or not, please don't hesitate to call or text me. Anytime. Nalia took the card, running her thumb over the embossed letters of his name and number. She realized with a bit of a jolt that she felt a sense of reassurance knowing she could reach him. Thank you, Donovan. Truly, you've been unbelievably kind. He gave a modest smile. I'm just glad I can do something helpful. He then stood, and ever the gentleman helped her up from her chair. Shall I have my driver drop you off somewhere? I noticed you declined earlier, but the offer stands. She nearly declined out of habit, but remembered Simone's advice to accept help when needed. Actually, that would be nice if it's not too much trouble. Just back to my apartment would be fine. No trouble at all, Donovan replied. It's on my way. They exited the restaurant together. If any passers-by noticed the tall, well-dressed CEO walking with a pregnant woman, they paid no heed. A black town car pulled up promptly. Donovan opened the door for Nalia and ensured she was comfortably seated. before sliding in on the other side. The ride was short but companionable. They chatted a bit more about innocuous topics, the sudden October, chill in the New York air, a new art exhibit opening at the MoMA, even a little about Donovan's company. He promised to give her a tour of the new headquarters building under construction sometime. Nalia found herself at ease, almost forgetting the pain for those few moments. It struck her that in the span of an hour, Donovan had managed to not only offer her a lifeline, but also something she hadn't expected to feel again soon: hope. When the car stopped outside her apartment building, Donovan stepped out with her. "Take care, Nalia," he said warmly. "I'll be in touch soon about next steps, but please, no stress. Take your time." "Take care, Donovan. And thank you for everything," she replied, holding his gaze for a moment. She felt that he truly cared, and it was both strange and wonderful to have someone new in her corner. As the car pulled away after he departed, Nalia stood on the sidewalk for a second, absorbing what had just happened. She touched the business card in her hand and then looked up at her building, where Simone was surely waiting anxiously for news. For the first time since her world fell apart, Nalia felt the darkness beginning to lift, just a little. She had encountered a person who saw value in her when she felt worthless, who offered help without asking for anything in return. It felt like the universe, which had so cruelly upended her life, was now extending a gentle hand to guide her forward. With a mixture of relief and cautious optimism blooming in her chest, Nalia headed inside, to tell her friend that perhaps, just perhaps, things were going to be okay after all. From complete devastation to a life-changing opportunity with a billionaire CEO. If you're invested in Nalia's journey right now, go ahead and hit that like button if you haven't already. Subscribe for more stories like this. And comment below, do you think Donovan has romantic feelings for Nalia, or is he just being kind? I'm curious what you think. Now let's see where this goes. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of new beginnings for Nalia. True to his word, Donovan's team onboarded her gently into the art consulting role. In the mornings, a car sent by Donovan's office would pick her up. He insisted. He didn't want her stressing on public transport while pregnant, and she would spend a few hours at H-Tech's current headquarters discussing art styles, budgets, and visiting galleries. By afternoon, he made sure she had time to rest or work from home so as not to overtax her. The flexible schedule and engaging work did wonders for Nalia's spirit. Each day, she felt a bit more like herself, confident and capable, rather than the broken woman of that infamous talk show clip. Donovan often joined the art discussions when his schedule allowed. Nalia discovered that despite his lack of art knowledge, he was enthusiastic and curious. One morning, as they walked through a small Soho art gallery together, he listened intently to her explain the significance of a series of abstract paintings by a young black artist. His questions were thoughtful, and he had a way of making her feel like the expert in the room, which in this case she was. "I really value your insight," he told her after that gallery visit, as they stepped out into the crisp air. "This collection you're curating is going to give the office so much character. I can already picture employees pausing in the halls to actually appreciate the art, instead of just rushing by generic decorations." Nalia smiled, the compliment warming her. "That's the idea," she said. "Art can inspire and uplift, even in a workplace." "I'm glad you're supportive of making it a priority," Donovan chuckled. "Honestly, before I met you, I might not have appreciated just how impactful it could be. Now I'm convinced. You're converting me into an art lover." He flashed her an easy grin that made her heart skip unexpectedly. Moments like that became more frequent, moments where they were simply two people, enjoying a conversation, learning from each other, and sharing unguarded smiles. Nalia found herself looking forward to seeing Donovan each day, not just for work updates, but for the comfort of his presence. He had a calm, steady energy that put her at ease, and he, in turn, seemed to seek out her company whenever he could, whether it was stopping by during her meetings, with his facilities team, or ensuring they grabbed lunch together if they were in the same building. One afternoon, about a month into her new role, Donovan invited Nalia to accompany him to the construction site of the new headquarters building. "I thought you might want to get a feel for the space where some of your chosen pieces will eventually go," he said. They donned hard hats and neon safety vests as a site manager led them through the half-finished skyscraper. The place was buzzing with activity, workers welding, electricians running cables, the beeping of forklifts echoing. Donovan stayed close to Nalia, gently guiding her around any obstacles on the floor and making sure she didn't trip. At one point, they had to climb a short set of temporary stairs, and Donovan instinctively offered his hand to help her up. She took it, grateful for the steady support. His hand was warm and strong around hers, and even after she was safely up the steps, neither of them let go immediately. They shared a brief, slightly bashful glance, before both politely releasing hands. A faint blush warmed Nalia's cheeks under her hard hat. She hoped he wouldn't notice. On the 20th floor, which would become the main executive level, they stepped out onto what would be Donovan's corner office. The floor-to-ceiling windows were in place, giving a breathtaking view of the New York skyline. Nalia walked toward the glass, awed, despite the unfinished surroundings. "The view is incredible," she said, looking out at Central Park in the distance. Donovan came up beside her. "It is. I used to dream about an office with a view like this when I started the company in a little rented closet of a room downtown." He glanced at her, a reflective smile on his face. "Sometimes I can't believe how far things have come." Nalia turned to him, admiring the way the daylight caught the specks of green in his grey eyes. "You've worked hard for it. You should be proud." He shrugged modestly. "I am, but I also know it could all vanish tomorrow. That's part of why I want to invest in lasting things, like community projects, art, relationships." He said the last word with a slight hesitation, almost as if testing how it sounded. She looked back out the window, heart gently fluttering. "Relationships, like the arts center?" she asked softly, unsure if he meant something more personal. Donovan cleared his throat lightly. "Yes, the arts center, partnerships with the community," he clarified. There was a hint of something unspoken in the air, but before either could explore it, the site manager interrupted to point out where walls would eventually divide the space. The moment slipped away, but the memory of his hand holding hers and that almost charged word relationships lingered in Nalia's mind. As autumn deepened, the weather grew colder and the holiday season approached. By now, Nalia was well into her third trimester. Her belly was round and unmistakable, and the baby's kicks were strong. Donovan had been unfailingly considerate of her condition, always ensuring. Meetings were in comfortable chairs, giving her breaks without her, even having to ask, and one time showing up at her door in the morning, with an ergonomic cushion after she casually mentioned her back ached. One late November evening, the company hosted a fundraising gala for the new Community Arts Center. It was a high-profile event, and Donovan invited Nalia to attend, not as an employee, but as his personal guest. "Only if you feel up to it," he said over the phone a week prior. "I just thought you might enjoy seeing the support for the project you're helping to shape. And I'd be happy to have your company." Nalia accepted the invitation, touched by the offer and, admittedly, excited at the prospect of a glamorous night out, something she never imagined doing again after her marriage fell apart. Simone was thrilled to help Nalia find a gown that accommodated her baby bump. They settled on a floor-length emerald green dress that made Nalia feel elegant for the first time in a long while. When Donovan arrived to pick her up that evening, dressed in a classic black tuxedo, he actually seemed momentarily speechless at the sight of her. His eyes swept over her in appreciation, and he recovered with a warm, "You look stunning, Nalia." She felt heat in her cheeks and smiled. "Thank you. You look very dashing yourself." At the gala, held in a grand ballroom at a Manhattan hotel, Donovan rarely left her side. He introduced her to several notable artists and philanthropists as an integral part of his team working on the Arts Center, giving her credit that made her blush and glow with pride. Many people threw curious glances at the beautiful pregnant woman on the arm of the tech CEO, but all the feedback Nalia heard was positive and polite. If there was any gossip about the nature of their relationship, it didn't reach her ears, though she did catch one older. socialite giving Donovan a sly nudge and whispering something that made him respond with a faintly embarrassed smile. Nalia wondered what that was about, but she didn't ask. As the evening progressed, music and dancing began. Donovan had been solicitous, asking her multiple times if she needed to sit or step out for air. She assured him she was feeling fine. Better than fine, actually. The energy of the event and Donovan's attentive care had buoyed her mood immensely. When a slow, melodic tune started playing, Donovan gently offered his hand. "Would you like to dance? We can go slowly." Nalia hesitated, automatically glancing down at her belly. "I'm not sure I'll be very graceful," she joked self-deprecatingly. Donovan's expression was earnest. "You'll be perfect." With a shy nod, she placed her hand in his. He led her onto the dance floor. True to his word, he kept their movements minimal, a gentle swaying in place more than anything. His arm was secure around her back, the other holding her hand close to his chest. Nalia rested her free hand lightly on his shoulder. Being this close to him was intoxicating in a way she hadn't expected. She could catch the subtle scent of his cologne, crisp and woodsy, and feel the warmth radiating from him. They swayed to the music, and for a little while it felt like they were in their own bubble amidst the twirling couples. Donovan's eyes locked with hers. "How are you feeling? Not too tired?" he asked softly. "I'm all right," she answered, heart thumping a bit faster. "I'm actually having a wonderful time." He smiled, looking relieved and happy. "I'm glad. You deserve some joy." His voice was gentle, almost intimate. "I wanted to say, seeing you here tonight, confident and glowing, contributing to something meaningful, it's a beautiful sight." Nalia's breath hitched slightly. The way he said beautiful made it sound like he wasn't just talking about the scene, but about her. Her hand tightened a little on his shoulder. "I have you to thank for a lot of that," she murmured. "I wouldn't be here without your kindness." Donovan shook his head. "You give me too much credit. You've shown remarkable strength and grace. I'm just happy I got to witness it." They had stopped moving. They were just standing there, holding each other amid the music. Donovan's hand that was on her back drifted slightly, almost to her waist, as if drawing her a breath closer. His gaze flickered to her lips for a brief second, and Nalia felt her pulse quicken. Was he going to kiss her? Here, in front of everyone? Part of her didn't mind the idea at all, but another part, still fragile, still legally married, albeit in name only, panicked at the vulnerability of that moment. She gently tilted her head down, breaking eye contact, her lashes veiling her eyes. Sensing it, Donovan cleared his throat softly and loosened his hold, resuming the slow sway to ease the tension. He didn't push further. Instead, he continued the dance respectfully until the song ended. After that, as if on cue, she felt a wave of fatigue. The adrenaline of the evening began to wear off, and a slight ache formed in her lower back. "Donovan, I think I should sit down now," she said apologetically. "Of course," he responded immediately, concern returning. He guided her to a quiet seating area at the side of the ballroom and got her a fresh glass of water. "We can leave whenever you want. In fact, perhaps we should call it a night." Nalia nodded, appreciative that he didn't question her sudden withdrawal. Truthfully, the almost kiss had sent her emotions into a whirl, and she needed space to think. "It's been a lovely night, but yes, I think I'm getting a bit tired." They made their polite goodbyes to a few people and slipped out. In the car ride home, Nalia was quiet, looking out the window at the city lights streaking by, her mind racing with conflicting feelings. She was drawn to Donovan. There was no denying it now. The tender moments they shared, his unwavering support, his charm and decency. It all made it very easy to fall for him. But she was also scared. Her heart was still tender from the betrayal she'd endured. Could she trust her feelings? And even if she did, would it be fair to entangle Donovan in the messy aftermath of her broken marriage and a baby on the way? As if guessing her inner turmoil, Donovan did not press her with conversation. He simply sat beside her, occasionally stealing a glance her way with a soft expression. When the car pulled up at her apartment, Donovan walked her to the building door as usual. "Thank you for tonight," Nalaya said, clutching her shawl around her. "It was more fun than I've had in a long time." "I'm really happy you came," Donovan replied. He hesitated, then added, "Take care of yourself, and I'll see you Monday." They had planned to visit a few galleries together on Monday. "Yes, Monday," she confirmed. They stood there for a moment, an unspoken tension between them. Donovan looked like he wanted to say more, but finally he simply gave her a warm smile and said, "Good night, Nalaya." "Good night, Donovan," she replied, returning the smile and heading inside. Upstairs, Simone was waiting eagerly, having stayed in her spare bedroom while Nalaya was out. Insisting someone should be around just in case a very pregnant lady came home late, Simone peppered her with questions. How was the gala? How did Donovan look? Did they dance? Nalaya answered in a dreamy, detached way, still processing her own feelings. When Simone asked teasingly, "So, did Mr. Billionaire make a move under the moonlight?" Nalaya blushed and shook her head. "No, not exactly. We danced. It was nice." She bit her lip, debating whether to confide the almost kiss moment. In the end, she just sighed. "I think he wanted to, kiss me. But he didn't. And I'm not sure if I'm relieved or disappointed." Simone's expression softened from playful to understanding. "Probably a bit of both, huh?" Nalaya nodded, tears unexpectedly gathering in her eyes. "It's so confusing, Simone. I have feelings for him, I won't lie. Being with him feels so easy and right sometimes. But then I remember how everything fell apart with my ex, and I get scared. And I'm about to have a baby. I don't know if I'm ready for something new, or if he even truly wants that or is just being kind." "Oh, honey," Simone cooed, coming over to give her a gentle hug, mindful of her belly between them. "From what I've seen and what you've told me, Donovan seems crazy about you, or at least very caring. But he's also respectful. He probably doesn't want to rush or pressure you, given all you've been through." Nalaya sniffled, wiping her eyes. "I know, and I appreciate that. It's probably for the best we're taking it slow. Sometimes I lie awake and think what it would be like if I met him first, or in another life, under different circumstances. And then I feel guilty, like I'm betraying something." "Betraying who?" "That sorry excuse of a husband who walked out on you," Simone said bluntly. "He doesn't deserve one iota of your guilt or loyalty. You owe him nothing, Nalaya." A flash of steel went through Nalaya's heart at that truth. Simone was right. What was she clinging to? Griffin had shattered their vows and humiliated her. She didn't owe him her loneliness or misery. If happiness was knocking on her door again in the form of Donovan, didn't she deserve to at least consider answering? "I think I'm just scared of being hurt again," Nalaya admitted softly. Simone squeezed her hand. "That's natural, but not every man is Griffin. Donovan has shown you in so many ways that he's different. Actions speak volumes. He came into your life when you were at rock bottom and helped lift you up expecting nothing in return. He's been consistent, caring and honest with you. You can trust him." Nalaya gave a small, hopeful smile. "Maybe you're right. I usually am," Simone said with a smirk, earning a little laugh from Nalaya. Simone then patted the baby bump lightly. "Plus, this little one could use a positive father figure. Even if you two were just friends, Donovan has already stepped up more than the actual father ever did." A protective warmth spread through Nalaya at the thought of her baby. In recent weeks, her child's impending arrival had gone from a source of anxiety to a source of motivation and hope. And yes, Donovan had played a big part in that transformation. He had made her feel safe and supported. That night, as Nalaya settled into bed, her thoughts lingered on Donovan's kind eyes and the feel of his arms as they danced. She allowed herself, just for a moment, to imagine a future where she and Donovan were together, laughing, raising her son or daughter in a loving home, perhaps even having more children down the line, building a life side by side. The vision was tender and warm, and it frightened her how much she wanted it to be real. She knew they weren't there yet. They hadn't even had a real discussion about their feelings. But maybe, she thought as she drifted to sleep, maybe They were on their way. December brought a thin dusting of snow to the city streets, and with it, for Nalaya, a sense of cautious optimism about the future. She was nearly 8 months pregnant now, and feeling the strain physically. But her heart was lighter than it had been in a long time. The consulting work was wrapping up nicely. She'd curated a remarkable selection of art pieces for Donovan's company and laid the groundwork for the Community Arts Center collection. Donovan, ever considerate, had urged her to start maternity leave from the project early, on full pay, of course. She had agreed to slow down but still tinkered from home, drafting final recommendations and emails, wanting to finish her commitments properly. It was on a cold, grey afternoon that Nalaya found herself alone in her apartment, sitting at her dining table with her laptop, sipping cocoa while reviewing some notes. Simone was at work, and they'd planned to meet later to do a bit of baby shopping. Life had taken on a semblance of normalcy, almost peaceful. A sudden loud buzz from the intercom shattered that peace. Startled, Nalaya rose, one hand on her belly. She wasn't expecting any visitors. Donovan usually texted ahead if he planned to stop by, and the delivery she ordered wasn't due until tomorrow. Approaching the intercom, she pressed the talk button. "Hello? Nalaya, it's me. Let me up." Her blood ran cold at the unmistakable voice crackling through the speaker. Griffin. She hadn't heard his voice in person since that fateful day on the show. Her heart kicked into a gallop. What do you want?" she managed to say, trying to keep her voice from shaking. "Just to talk," Griffin replied. His tone was strangely calm, almost cheerful, as if nothing were amiss. "Come on, let me up. We have things to discuss." Nalaya's mind raced. How did he have the nerve to show up here? After everything? She certainly had no desire to see him. "I don't think we have anything to discuss," she said firmly. There was a short silence, then a sigh. "Look, I know I messed up, okay? I've been doing some thinking. Can we please just talk for a few minutes face to face? I promise I'll be civil." Nalaya's instinct was to refuse outright, but part of her was curious, and another part, perhaps the part that needed closure, thought that maybe it was necessary to confront him directly at least once. Also, she worried that if she didn't let him up, he might linger outside the building or make a scene. The last thing she wanted was him harassing her neighbors or drawing attention. Against her better judgment, she pressed the door entry button. Her hands trembled as she then unlocked her apartment door, leaving it just slightly ajar, and stepped back. She took a deep breath, trying to steady the flurry of emotions in her chest, anger, anxiety, even a vestige of the old hurt. When Griffin appeared at her doorway moments later, she had to steel herself from reacting. He looked familiar, yet oddly different. The same sandy blonde hair and blue eyes, the same athletic build under a stylish winter coat. But there was something off. Perhaps it was the slight pallor to his face, or the anxious energy in his movements as he stepped inside. He closed the door behind him, softly. "Hi, Nalaya," he said, offering a tentative smile that once might have melted her, but now only felt like an act. His eyes flickered down to her very pregnant belly, and for a fleeting second, an emotion she couldn't read passed over his face. "You look, well." Nalaya folded her arms protectively over her bump. "I'm surprised you think so, given the last time we spoke, you implied I was something you wanted nothing to do with," she responded, unable to keep the edge from her voice. Griffin winced slightly and held up his hands. "I know. I deserve that. I deserve worse. I was an idiot, okay? I panicked on that show. I said horrible things I didn't mean." He stepped a bit closer, and Nalaya instinctively stepped back. He noticed and stopped, his expression turning pained. "I don't blame you for hating me." Nalaya's heart thudded. She had imagined this scenario many times, what she would say to him if she ever saw him again. Now that he was here, speaking contritely, she found her anger battling with a morbid curiosity. "If you didn't mean those things, then why did you say them, Griffin?" Her voice trembled, despite her attempt to sound strong. "You broke us. You broke me. On live television, no less. How could you do that?" He ran a hand through his hair, looking genuinely anguished. I was scared, he said quietly. The idea of becoming a father, I wasn't ready. And the way you told me, I felt ambushed. I lost it. I felt like I had no control, like I was being forced into a life I wasn't sure I wanted, and I lashed out. He exhaled deeply, and afterwards, when I walked away, I regretted it. I regretted it all, Nalaya. She searched his face. His words sounded like an apology, something she had dreamed of hearing in those first lonely nights after he left. But now, hearing them, she wasn't as comforted as she once imagined she'd be. Instead, she felt a swell of indignation. You regretted it? She echoed, disbelieving. Funny, you had a strange way of showing that. You never called, never checked on me or your unborn child. Not once in all these months, Griffin. You signed the divorce papers without a word, so you'll forgive me if I find this sudden remorse a little hard to believe. Griffin's jaw tightened when she mentioned the divorce papers. For a moment, a flash of irritation crossed his features, but he quickly smothered it. I thought it's what you wanted. After what I did, I assumed you'd never want to see me again. And honestly, I didn't know how to face you. I was too ashamed. Nalaya shook her head, feeling a bitter taste in her mouth. If you were truly ashamed, you'd have left me in peace. Why are you here now? What do you really want, Griffin? He took another step forward, and this time she held her ground, meeting his gaze with steely resolve. I want a second chance, he said softly. With you. With our baby. I want to make things right. The audacity of it left Nalaya momentarily speechless. She let out a short, incredulous laugh. Make things right? After deserting us so cruelly? Why now, Griffin? Because from where I stand, the timing of your change of heart is extremely convenient. His eyes narrowed slightly. What's that supposed to mean? It means, Nalaya said, her tone sharpening, that I suspect this epiphany of yours has less to do with genuine guilt and more to do with the fact that you've heard I'm doing all right without you. Maybe you even heard that I have support, powerful support. And that burns you, doesn't it? Color rose in Griffin's cheeks. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't play dumb, she snapped. It felt liberating to finally unleash some of what she'd held back. Word gets around, especially online. I'm sure you caught the rumors or saw the photos from the gala. Me on the arm of Donovan Hale. Or maybe you're just upset that public opinion squarely painted you as the villain after that show aired. Is your sudden appearance here an attempt at damage control for your image? Or perhaps you're worried that if I move on and someone else, like Donovan, steps in, you'll be forever seen as the jerk who let a good thing slip away. Griffin flinched at her direct hit. His eyes flashed with something, anger, humiliation, jealousy, or all of the above. He tried to keep his voice calm, but it came out clipped. So it's true. You and that billionaire have something going on. That's none of your business, Nalaya replied coldly. You lost any right to have an opinion on my life the moment you walked out. The veneer of contrition on Griffin's face began to crack. I see, he said, voice turning bitter. It didn't take you long to replace me, did it? Trading up for someone richer, more successful, real convenient for you. Nalia's eyes widened at the accusation. How dare you, she hissed. After all you put me through, you think I was the one looking to trade up? Donovan picked me up from the lowest I've ever been. He showed me kindness when you showed me cruelty. And let's be clear, I didn't replace you. You threw me away. Griffin stepped forward aggressively, and Nalaya instinctively moved back until her back was close to the wall. He didn't touch her, but he was close enough that she felt a wave of intimidation. She refused to cower, staring back at him even as her heart hammered. I am still the father of that child, Griffin said through gritted teeth, gesturing vaguely at her belly. If you're so keen on comparing, maybe you should remember that. I have rights. Nalaya felt a surge of protective fury. Rights? You forsook those rights when you publicly denied our baby and declared you wanted no part of us. You think you can just waltz back in now and claim fatherhood like a trophy? Her voice rose with passion. Parenthood is a responsibility, Griffin, not a right. It's earned through love and commitment, neither of which you have shown. Griffin's face reddened. People make mistakes, Nalia. I made a mistake. I'm trying to fix it. No, Nalia retorted, her own temper flaring. You're trying to fix yourself, your image, your guilt, whatever it is. This isn't about what's best for me or the baby. If it were, you'd have reached out months ago with child support, or at least a sincere apology through more channels than showing up unannounced demanding a conversation. His jaw clenched, and for a moment she saw raw frustration. Fine. Maybe I did see the articles, he admitted brusquely. Maybe I heard that Donovan Hale took pity on you. The whole world's been whispering about how the poor abandoned wife landed on her feet with some Prince Charming billionaire. And yeah, maybe that pissed me off. Is that what you want to hear? His eyes were ice cold now. It's not fun being the bad guy everyone boos at. I lost my job over it, did you know that? My boss said I brought too much negative press. Friends stopped talking to me because their wives or girlfriends didn't want them around that awful Griffin. I've been paying in spades for what happened. Nalia felt zero sympathy. She actually let out a short laugh of disbelief. And you think you paid? Griffin, I lost my husband and the father of my child in one blow. I cried myself to sleep for weeks. I had to rebuild my life from scratch while pregnant, and humiliated publicly. But you know what? I did rebuild. And now that I'm finally doing better, you think you can just pop back in and share in the rewards? Absolutely not. She pointed towards the door, her hand trembling with adrenaline. This conversation is over. Get out of my home. Griffin didn't budge. I still might have a say in what happens with that kid, he said lowly. If you think I'm going to stand by while some other man plays daddy to my son or daughter, you have another thing coming. Nalia's stomach churned. Was that a threat? Donovan is 10 times the man you will ever be, and if by, say in what happens, you mean dragging us through a custody or paternity battle out of spite, then go ahead, expose yourself further. I have every bit of evidence of your abandonment. No court would side with you given what you did. Griffin's expression twisted, anger overtaking any remaining pretense of remorse. Don't test me, he warned, his voice dropping. I'm still your husband on paper for now, and I could contest that divorce, make it messy. Maybe I don't actually want to raise a kid, but I sure as hell won't let you and your sugar daddy cut me out completely without consequences. Nalia felt a stab of fear, not for herself, but for the potential turmoil he could cause. She realized then that Griffin hadn't changed at all. This wasn't about love or regret. It was about ego and possibly extortion. Before she could respond, a voice rang out from the doorway behind Griffin. She asked you to leave, came the firm, cold tone of Donovan. In her distress, neither Nalia nor Griffin had heard the door open. Donovan stood there now, having let himself in through the ajar door when he overheard the raised voices. His usually warm grey eyes were steely with controlled anger. He looked between Nalia and Griffin, quickly assessing the tense situation. Griffin spun around, surprise flashing across his face at Donovan's sudden presence. This is a private matter, he snapped. Butt out. Donovan stepped fully into the apartment. Though he was an inch or two shorter than Griffin, he carried an air of authority that made the other man instinctively take a step back. It ceased to be a private matter when you trespassed into Nalia's home and threatened her. Donovan's voice was calm but laced with an unmistakable menace on Nalia's behalf. Relief flooded Nalia at Donovan's arrival, but her nerves remained wound tight. She had never seen Donovan look so intimidating. He moved to Nalia's side, subtly positioning himself slightly in front of her, a protective stance that did not go unnoticed. She clutched the back of his jacket lightly, steadying herself and silently conveying gratitude for his presence. Griffin sneered. Protecting the damsel in distress, are we? How cliché. He eyed Donovan with contempt. You have no idea what you're getting involved in. Donovan's jaw flexed. I know enough. I saw exactly what you did to her, and I've seen what kind of person you are from your own mouth. If you have any sense of decency left, you'll leave now and let Nalia live her life in peace. Oh, I'm sure you'd love that, Griffin retorted. Then you can swoop in without any competition, right? Play hero and reap the rewards. Before Donovan could respond, Nalia stepped forward, anger burning through her fear. I am not some prize to be won, Griffin, and this isn't a competition. I get to choose who is in my life, and it is not you. Now, for the last time, leave, or we will call the police. Griffin's eyes darted between her and Donovan. Seeing their united front, his confidence faltered just a bit. This isn't over, he spat, but his bravado rang hollow. Donovan pulled his phone from his pocket. It is over. Leave, or I'm dialing 911 right now, and you can explain to them why you're harassing the mother of your child. For a moment, Nalia thought Griffin might lunge or yell something worse, but instead, he let out a frustrated curse under his breath, yanked open the door, and stalked out. He slammed it behind him so hard the walls trembled. The silence that followed was heavy and thick. Nalia realized she had been holding her breath, and finally exhaled shakily. Her heart was pounding, and a wave of dizziness washed over her. Donovan immediately turned to her, concern replacing anger on his face. Nalia, are you all right? He asked gently, placing his hands on her shoulders. She nodded, though tears of stress had begun to brim in her eyes. I'm okay, she whispered. But as the adrenaline ebbed, the emotional toll hit her. She covered her face with her hands, her composure shattering. Sobs welled up from deep inside, of fear, of relief, of pent-up anguish from facing that man again. Donovan pulled her into a tender embrace, one hand cradling the back of her head as she cried into his chest. It's all right, he soothed, his voice soft in her ear. You're safe now. I'm here. Nalia clung to him, letting his strength steady her. She could feel his heart beating as hard as hers. Whether from anger or fear for her, she wasn't sure. Probably both. Thank you, she managed between sobs. I was handling it, but I'm so glad you came. He held her a little tighter at that. Always. I'll always come when you need me. They stayed like that for a long moment, wrapped in each other, until Nalia's sobs subsided. She became aware then of a different sensation, a sharp, tight pain suddenly radiating across her belly and lower back. She flinched, instinctively bringing a hand to her abdomen. Donovan felt her tense and immediately loosened his hold to look at her, worry etched on his face. What's wrong? Nalia's brow furrowed. The pain faded after about 15 seconds. It wasn't entirely unfamiliar. She'd had the occasional Braxton Hicks contraction in recent weeks. But this felt stronger, more intense. I'm not sure. It might just be stress causing a contraction, she said, trying to stay calm. But even as she said it, she felt a small gush of fluid trickle down her leg. Her eyes went wide in realization and alarm. Donovan, she gasped, looking at him with a mixture of fear and excitement. My water just broke. Donovan reacted with swift composure. Within a minute, he had fetched Nalia's hospital bag which Simone had, wisely convinced her to pack weeks ago, and helped Nalia into his car. His arm was around her as she breathed through another contraction, which was stronger than the last. Despite the tension, Nalia noticed his hands were steady and his voice calm as he reassured her that everything would be all right. During the drive, he phoned ahead to the hospital to alert them that a patient in labor was on the way, and then he called Simone to inform her as well. Nalia, in the passenger seat, tried to focus on her breathing like she'd learned in the birthing class. Donovan's presence and level-headedness kept panic at bay, though the contractions were coming faster now, and her nerves were spiking. They reached the hospital in what felt like no time. Donovan pulled up to the emergency entrance, and staff were ready with a wheelchair. Nalia was whisked to the maternity ward, with Donovan right by her side, holding her hand the entire time. When a nurse tried to ask if he was the father, both Nalia and Donovan hesitated. In that split second, not sure what to label him, Donovan simply said, "I'm with her," in a tone that brooked no argument. That was enough. The staff assumed he was the involved partner and treated him as such. Labor was intense and progressed quickly, likely hastened by the stress of the confrontation. Within an hour, Nalia found herself in a delivery room, gripping Donovan's hand with each contraction. Simone arrived in time to join them, offering soothing words and background support. but it was Donovan, who stayed at Nalaya's head, cooling her brow with a damp cloth, encouraging her softly through the pain. "Breathe, Nalaya." "You're doing amazing," he whispered, his forehead nearly touching hers as she bore down through another push. Nalaya had tears of pain and determination in her eyes, and in their depths, Donovan's unwavering gaze gave her strength. In that moment, he was her rock. She drew from his calm, from the gentle but firm way he guided her breathing. After what felt simultaneously like ages and mere seconds, the cry of a newborn finally filled the room. A wail so strong and vibrant that Nalaya let out a sob of relief and joy. "It's a girl," announced the doctor, lifting the tiny infant briefly before placing her onto Nalaya's chest. A baby girl. Nalaya felt a rush of emotions so powerful she could scarcely breathe, pure love, awe, and a fierce protectiveness. "Hello, my love," Nalaya whispered, tears streaming down her face as she cradled her daughter for the first time. Beside her, Donovan's eyes were also shiny with tears he didn't bother to hide. He gently rested a hand on Nalia's back as he gazed at the newborn in wonder. Simone sniffled happily from near the foot of the bed, offering a congratulatory grin. After the cord was cut and the baby cleaned and swaddled, a nurse helped transfer the infant to Donovan's arms while Nalaya was tended to. Donovan looked both elated and nervous as he carefully cradled the tiny bundle. The newborn fussed softly, and Donovan's face broke into the softest smile Nalaya had ever seen. "Hi there," he murmured to the baby, his voice thick with emotion. "Welcome to the world, little one." Nalaya watched him from her bed, feeling her heart swell. Here was a man who owed nothing to her or this child, yet he was standing here, looking at the baby girl as if she were the most precious thing on earth. It was in that moment that Nalaya knew, without a doubt, that she had fallen deeply in love with Donovan Hale. A short while later, after everything had calmed, and Nalaya had been given the all-clear from the doctors, she lay propped up in the hospital bed, exhausted but radiant, with her baby girl in her arms. Donovan stood by, having stepped out briefly to allow her some privacy, while being examined and now returning with a cup of ice water for her. Simone had gone to call Nalia's parents with the happy news and to grab a celebratory coffee, giving the new little family a quiet moment. They hadn't yet spoken about the confrontation with Griffin or the new shift. In their relationship dynamic, the whirlwind of labor had overtaken everything. But now, in the calm after, the unspoken hung in the air. Nalaya looked up at Donovan, who was gazing at her and the baby with such tenderness. "Donovan, I don't know how to thank you," she began softly, "for everything. You've been by my side through the worst and now the best moment of my life. Her voice caught as emotion welled. Donovan moved a chair closer to her bedside and sat down. "You never have to thank me," he said gently. "Being here for you, it's what I wanted more than anything. I'm just grateful you allowed me to be here." He carefully reached out and stroked the baby's cheek with a fingertip, marveling at how tiny she was. The baby yawned and blinked her dark eyes sleepily. Nalaya gave a soft laugh. I think she recognizes the voice of the man who kept her mama calm all these weeks. She looked at Donovan seriously, her eyes searching his. "You know, you're the reason she's here safely. If you hadn't come by when you did..." She shuddered at the thought of what stress might have done had Donovan not intervened. Donovan's expression darkened slightly at the mention of Griffin. "I'll never let anything happen to either of you," he said quietly, but with conviction. "By the way, don't worry about him. I've already spoken to my head of security and legal team. We'll make sure he doesn't come near you or the baby again. A restraining order is being filed as we speak, and given his threats earlier today, it shouldn't be hard to get approved." Nalaya exhaled in relief. The idea of Griffin trying to intrude again had been a shadow in the back of her mind, but hearing Donovan's proactive assurance lifted that weight. "Thank you," she said. She hesitated, then added, "I'm sorry that you even have to deal with this because of me. You shouldn't have to use your resources on my problems." Donovan frowned and reached out, gently tilting her chin so she looked directly at him. "They're not just your problems, Nalaya. I meant what I said earlier. I'm here for you, for both of you." His gaze dropped to the baby and back to her. If you'll have me, that is. Her breath caught. There it was, laid bare between them. The feelings they had both danced around. The question of what comes next for them, now that everything had changed. Nalia felt tears spring up again, but this time out of happiness. Donovan, she swallowed, summoning courage. I don't just want you here as a friend or some helpful benefactor. I want you by my side in my life as part of my family. Her voice trembled with vulnerability. I know I'm a bit of a package deal now. She smiled down at her baby. But if you can accept that, then yes. Please stay with us. Not out of obligation, but because you want to. Donovan's face lit up, relief and joy washing over his features. Nalia, I've wanted that for a while now, he confessed. He gently took her free hand in his, threading his fingers through hers. I was just waiting for the right time and trying to give you space to heal. I didn't want to push while you were still sorting through so much pain. You helped heal that pain, she whispered. You made me believe in love and trust again, Donovan. He brought her hand to his lips and pressed a tender kiss to her knuckles. I love you, Nalia, he said softly, the words flowing naturally and sincerely. I love both of you. He glanced adoringly at the baby. You have brought so much light into my life in such a short time. I can't imagine it without you anymore. A radiant smile broke across Nalia's face. Those words, spoken by this wonderful man, filled the last remaining broken pieces of her heart with warmth. I love you too, she said, voice thick with tears of joy. I think a part of me loved you from the moment you showed up for me, though it took me a while to realize it. Donovan leaned in, and with utmost gentleness, he kissed Nalia. It was a soft, loving kiss, one full of promises and hope. Nalia closed her eyes and kissed him back, a few happy tears slipping free. In that kiss was the end of her old chapter of heartbreak and the beginning of a new story. One of love, trust, and a family formed not by traditional means, but by choices and kindness. They broke apart when the baby gave a little whimper, as if reminding them of her presence. Both new parents laughed softly. Donovan brushed a fingertip over the baby's tiny hand, and the little fingers reflexively curled around it. His eyes widened in awe at the tiny grip. Strong girl, he murmured affectionately. Do you want to hold her again? Nalia asked. She carefully transferred the newborn to his arms, guiding him on how to support her head. Donovan cradled the baby against his chest. He looked completely at ease, swaying gently as he held her. The sight made Nalia's heart melt. Here was a man who had stepped into a role he never expected, yet he was handling it with such love. Simone peeked in quietly then, not wanting to intrude but eager to congratulate. Seeing the tableau of Donovan holding the baby and Nalia smiling, Simone's eyes nearly popped out of her head in delight. Well, if this isn't the picture of a perfect family, she exclaimed, walking in with a grin. Nalia and Donovan exchanged a shy yet proud look. It did feel like a family, an unexpected, hard-won family. She's beautiful, Nalia, Simone gushed, gently stroking the baby's downy soft hair. Have you decided on a name yet? Nalia had been so overwhelmed by the birth that she hadn't even thought of it in those first moments. She exchanged a glance with Donovan, who nodded encouragingly. In their many chats, she had shared a few name ideas with him, and one in particular had seemed to resonate. Yes, Nalia said, smiling at her daughter. Her name is Hope. Tears glistened in Simone's eyes. Hope. Oh, that's perfect. Nalia reached for Donovan's hand and squeezed it, her eyes never leaving her child. She's our hope. She came after so much pain, and she's the start of so much happiness. Donovan leaned in and kissed baby Hope's forehead softly. Welcome to the family, Hope, he whispered. In the days that followed, Nalia recuperated quickly with Donovan and Simone's help. News of Hope's birth remained a private joy. Nalia chose not to publicize anything, preferring to keep this precious new chapter away from prying media eyes. Griffin, as promised, was legally barred from contact. True to his pattern, he didn't attempt to reach out again once faced. With firm consequences, like a bully retreating when confronted, 2 weeks later, on a cozy evening in Nalia's apartment, which was now filled with baby blankets, flowers from well-wishers, and the sweet scent of newborn life, Nalia sat on the couch feeding hope while Donovan sat beside them, an arm comfortably around Nalia's shoulders. They watched the tiny baby doze off after her meal and marveled at how serene she looked. Nalia glanced around at the once lonely living space, now warm with love. On a whim, she turned on the TV to the same network that had hosted the fateful talk show, though the volume was muted. It made her reflect on how far she'd come. What started as the worst day of her life had ultimately led to this moment. Donovan followed her gaze to the darkened screen. He tightened his arm around her. "Any regrets about how things turned out?" he asked softly, guessing at her thoughts. Nalia shook her head slowly and rested her head against his shoulder. "It's strange, but I don't. If you asked me 2 months ago, I would have wished that day never happened, but now, it's like all of it had to happen to lead me here." She looked up at him with a grateful smile. "To lead me to you." He kissed her hair gently. "Fate works in mysterious ways." She nodded, cradling hope a little closer. "I wouldn't wish what happened on anyone, but I hope if someone out there is going through something similar, they'll see that it can get better, that sometimes life's cruelest twists can bring out the best people and the best outcomes." Donovan reached out and switched off the TV. "Maybe one day you should tell your story," he suggested. "On your terms. It might help someone." "Maybe," Nalia mused. Then she smirked lightly. "Perhaps I'll write a book. The daytime disaster that led me to love." Donovan chuckled. "I'd read that." She tilted her face toward him. "You're in every chapter." He smiled and closed the distance, kissing her once more, softly, sweetly, with the promise of a lifetime together. Nalia closed her eyes, absorbing the happiness of that moment. She had survived heartbreak and found a love more supportive and pure than she ever imagined. She had found her family, and as she drifted into a light sleep against Donovan's chest, baby Hope safe in her arms, Nalia knew that their future, though unwritten, would be filled with hope, kindness, and love, because they would write it together. And that's how the worst day of Nalia's life led her to the love she deserved. If you enjoyed this story, please hit the like button right now. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next story. I want to hear your thoughts in the comments. What did you think of Donovan? Would you have given Griffin a second chance? And have you ever experienced a terrible moment that led to something beautiful? Share your story below. If this touched your heart, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.